Hello and welcome to this special show, India Fights Back, where we talk about various aspects of the battle against COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and today we're going to talk about vaccines, their efficacy, how important they are in this battle against the COVID pandemic, and why we should go for them now that the government is allowing all above 18 years to be vaccinated from 1st of May. And for more on this, we're joined by two distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. Raman R. Gangakhedkar. He is member of the National Task Force for COVID-19, and also Dr. C.G. Pandit, National Chair at ICMR. We also have with us Professor Y.K. Gupta. He is member of NEGVAC, that is National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID-19. Welcome, both of you gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Professor Gupta. Let's start by what do we have in our arsenal when we talk about vaccines, their efficacy, not only, to the original strain, but vis-a-vis the variants which are known so far as VOC, that is variants of concern.
We have now three vaccines, two vaccines which are already been introduced. One is the Covaxin, another is the Covishield. And third vaccine, which has recently been approved by DCGI, which is Sputnik, and which is from Russia. This is yet to come in the market, but this has been approved. Now, as far as the Covishield is concerned, we have so far given vaccination to more than 11.6 crore population in India. This is the first dose which has been given, and of which about 10 crore has been given the first dose, and it has been very successful. And the people who are apprehensive of a reinfection, many people get reinfection and then they get panic or thing like that. So I would suggest to them that there is no need of panic, because this becomes almost less than 0.04%. Less than 0.04% will only get infection, because that is possible. And similarly, when you talk of Covaxin, which is Bharat Biotech's vaccine, 1.1 crore plus people have already got this vaccine, out of which 93 lakhs, almost 1 crore, have got the first dose, have got the second dose. And the breakthrough infection, which is again called the infection in spite of having vaccination, first dose or second dose, is again 0.04%. Now, people usually argue कि ये तो हम वैक्सीन भी लगा रहे हैं फिर भी हमारा इन्फेक्शन हो रहा है. So my message to them is no vaccine is 100% efficacious. There is a possibility that in some subjects or some population, the antibody may fall short. That is one. Or the infection may be more, and this is a biological variation. That's why the very small number of people may still get infection. However, the most important thing to understand is that these people, when get infection, the severity of intensity will be much lower, and therefore we have not seen any mortality in such patients. So that is, I think, a very satisfying thing. So we have a two vaccine already available. Third vaccine shortly available. Couple of more vaccines are on the way, and maybe by end of 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, these vaccines will gradually come up, and that's why we are planning to have the mass vaccination, 45, even 18 plus vaccination from May 1.
Okay, we'll talk about the other vaccines options as well later in the show, but let's bring in Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar here as well. Dr. Gangakhedkar, from your point of view, sir, the importance of vaccines when we are talking about the ongoing battle against COVID-19, how significant the vaccination part is, and as Professor Gupta gave us some figures in terms of the efficiency as well.
No, that's right. It's very significant, mainly because it is one intervention that will reduce the worst healthcare outcome of one hospitalization due to severe COVID disease and death, which could be consequence of severe COVID disease per se. And if you actually look at the data that is emerging, death is reduced by almost 100% among those who have been vaccinated across in the world. What is a bigger challenge is if you want to make a dent over even risk of transmissions, the best way we can do it is having this vaccine rollout which would be rapidly accepted by the community. And that is something which is very critical for us to understand. And the reason why this has to be discussed more in such shows is you want to ensure that the community that has vaccine hesitancy should drop that vaccine hesitancy, come to take the vaccine. If they take it, perhaps we would be like the state of Israel. Today, Israel has stopped even use of mask and COVID appropriate behavior because they say they have immunized almost everybody in Israel. Now, that's a big gain. You may have some kind of travel restrictions that may exist beyond that, but just the fact that they went very rapidly to vaccinate all the people, that has made a huge difference, and that we should be aiming at by accepting the vaccines which are currently available in the market by the government.
Okay, let me go back to Professor Gupta here, since you're talking about, the efficacy of the vaccines, the efficiency there. And, one thing which need to be further clarified to take away the hesitancy part there as well, Professor Gupta, is to make people understand that, the vaccines are as efficient against variant A as they are efficient against variant B or C. I'm talking about all kind of variants which are known so far, because that's what the ICMR study says.
You're very, very correct. I would not say a blanket statement that any vaccine produced anytime will always be effective against all the variants to come. But two important things, that any virus, the inherent property of a virus is to mutate. So viruses will mutate. Now, sometimes these mutations are harmless. Sometimes even these mutations can be beneficial in terms of a less severity. But when these mutations are dangerous or more infectivity or more transmissibility, then this becomes a variant of concern. We usually call them a VOC. Now, incidentally, the mutation which has occurred so far with the COVID-19 is a Brazil, UK or double mutation in India. The Covaxin has been found to be effective. And Covishield is also being tested and is found to be effective. Now, we expect that the Covaxin, because of the nature it is being produced, should also be effective against the most of the future mutation. But there is no guarantee 100%. But the satisfying thing is, as on date, these vaccines are effective against the mutation. So there is nothing to worry about. Important thing is also, now our country has developed a platform of vaccine production development. Now, it will not take this much of time, which even has taken now, which is a record low time, to develop a vaccine which will be effective, equally effective against any mutation. So that is the beauty of this science which we have done.
And what's Professor Gupta? What's the Sputnik data? Indicate what does it indicate in terms of that particular vaccine's efficacy against these VOCs? That's variant of concern. The ones which we know so far.
I will not comment upon that. Maybe Dr. Raman may comment upon that. If I have not seen the data. But I hope that this will act also same way, but I have not seen the data of whether it has been tested about the VOC or not. But I think it would also be effective. Maybe I will take help of Dr. Raman on this.
Okay, Dr. Gangakhedkar, your views there, sir, not only about Sputnik, but the other, two vaccines which we are using as well, because it has been almost now, more than 3 months into our vaccination campaign.
Yeah, if you actually look at all these 3 vaccines, the data that is currently available with, I think, for even Covaxin is for symptomatic infections. It doesn't cover asymptomatic infections because it requires a different study design to do the same. The only vaccine which has data with respect to asymptomatic infection is Covishield. There they found that even against variants, the vaccine drops the protective efficacy, but it continues to remain efficacious. Whether it is, you call it as 80%, it may fall to 50%, depending on which variant are we talking about. For Sputnik, if I recall correctly, there is no data against variants at all. They have just submitted the data of phase 3 trial showing that there is 91% protective efficacy. Now, when you have such a situation, what is it that we must remember? We must remember that even if the vaccine has lower efficacy, your COVID appropriate behavior is going to protect you even after vaccination to acquire new asymptomatic or mild infection per se. So even if there is a drop, until the time the virus changes so much that the virus will not be able to be stopped by vaccination, there is no reason for us to worry. The drop in efficacy should be taken in strides, and people should get themselves rapidly immunized, because there is one issue that we have to remember, that when people can acquire mild or asymptomatic infection, if you find that one section of the society is actually vaccinated and the other is not, those who have been vaccinated will become something like carriers. So you don't want that state to be a threat to a population which is not immunized. So the only way to avoid it is you have to go very rapidly to vaccinate people so that we can make a difference and that risk can be minimized the best possible way.
Okay, Professor Gupta, Dr. Gangakhedkar earlier also spoke about how it is really important to deal with the vaccine hesitancy part. And, just now he finished saying that it is really important for all of us to go ahead and put our best foot forward. So in terms of dealing with the vaccine hesitancy part, what's the strategy being adopted? And as a member of NEGVAC, what would you say to everybody? Now it'll be all of us who are above 18 years of age starting from 1st of May.
I think the public education by people who are scientists, who are educated, teachers, administrators, who understand the things, must do their role responsibilities of educating those who have vaccine hesitancy. In India, there is one which is called as a WhatsApp university, which creates such myths and then it gets circulated. And it is important that we must tell them, number one, that this is the vaccine is perhaps the best solution other than the COVID appropriate behavior. It will not only be useful for you, but it will also be useful for your family and for the community and the entire nation. Number two, that the vaccine does not mean that nobody after vaccination 1 or 2 doses will not get it, and therefore sporadic 0.04% incidence should not create panic, should not be blown up. Number three, they must also be told very clearly that those who are vaccinated, some degree of a significant degree of antibodies are there, and therefore intensity or severity of the infection will be much less even if they get it, and therefore possibility of going into the oxygen demand, ventilator, death is very, very significantly reduced. And lastly, it is good that our country is giving vaccine, even it is costly vaccine, is almost is free of cost. The government is absorbing this, though it is giving it, and after 1st of May, this will also be available in the market, which will be, of course, will not be so high. So I think why we should wait for a time when you will say, "Acha bhai, tumne sabne lagwa liya," you should be the last person to get it. You should be the first person to go and get it and protect yourself and your family. So vaccine hesitancy is a very bad thing. And those who promote it, those who should be should be told very clearly that this is absolutely anti-science, and I would go to the extent of science to telling this can be called as anti-social.
Indeed, that is really important. They are involving community. That message out there, Dr. Gangakhedkar, you've time and again, emphasized upon the importance of public messaging, or the community messaging out there. Importance of opinion makers as well. How significant are these aspects when we're talking about dealing with vaccine hesitancy, and in terms of a sort of a wider strategy to deal with this? What would your suggestions here be, not to only the strategy makers, but also to general public people, common people?
Yeah, I think all individuals have to realize one thing: government can do only X thing, but that X thing is only provision of services. But to get those services, to ensure that you consume them, you have to move ahead. You have to understand that you are responsible for your health, your family's health. By not taking vaccine, you are almost taking a risk which would entail, risk of death or severe COVID disease or post-COVID syndrome that could follow. Compare that risk with the small risk that you would have of any kind of side effect that might occur. If you cannot make that risk benefit analysis, then you have an issue in your own decision making per se. I'm sure every person, whether literate, illiterate, or whatever, makes right kind of decisions given the choices. I think it is time that they have to reflect on the right information and not what comes through social media, decide for themselves whether they would like to take the risk of development of severe COVID disease and death, or they would like to protect themselves from acquiring this particular infection, or that can perhaps lead to the development, the likelihood of death. I think that the choices are very clear. We have to make them simple. Make every person who is the eldest in the family, who is a decision maker of the family, say that everybody must take the vaccine in their own household. If we go with that kind of approach, perhaps you will find that vaccine hesitancy will be lesser.
Okay, fair enough out there. Professor Gupta, just to reiterate and inform our viewers once again, starting 1st of May, when people, everybody above the age of 18 will be eligible. How is the process going to be? The same as it is right now for those who are above 45 years of age, as in they can go to any government vaccination facility or private hospitals who are vaccinating people, register themselves and get themselves vaccinated, or is there any other layer involved here?
The fine tuning of the arrangement of 18 plus from 1st May onward is still being going on. Mm-hmm. But by and large, this will be centrally controlled. That means each and every person who gets vaccinated will be getting registered under CoWIN, and therefore the database will be very intact. Number two, that more number of centers who are trained vaccinators will be utilized, and also this has been already done where more than 100 people are those where vaccination can be done. And trained vaccinator can be posted. It is also important that when a center or vaccinator is posted or center is started, after giving vaccine, we ask them to wait for 30 minutes so that if there is any allergic reaction or if there is any side effect which requires medical attention, is provided. So these are the checks and balances have to be built in, and this is as everybody talks about proudly that this is this is the largest vaccination program on the world, and to meet all, and we are working on the zero error possibility because Indeed. It cannot afford, and that's why it requires a meticulous planning, and every day midnight oil is burned to make this planning to making the vials available in a cold chain, to make syringes available, to see that the syringes after use are disposed of properly, and also to ensure that there is a no or negligible vaccine wastage. I think this is a very tremendous Herculean task.
Indeed, it is very important and a Herculean task out there wherein everybody is involved. One last question here, Professor Gupta, and that is taking it from your first response, where you spoke about that several other vaccines are being developed. Work is, going on. So, what all other vaccine candidates which are being worked upon, domestically when we talk about Indian players, indigenous players, and how much time it might take?
There are two things. One is the vaccines which are coming from outside, and the government is taking decision that those vaccines which are used outside, even the bridging study may not be required. It may be faster. It can be given to Indian subject, provided you have 100 subject observed, and then you can give slightly larger. So that will basically introduce the vaccine faster. That's one. Number two, there are a couple of companies which are making vaccine like Zydus and like Cadila, like Panacea, and couple of others which government is funding. And also, Department of Biotechnology is funding again against the COVID Suraksha. This COVID Suraksha program, under which couple of organizations are including Indian Immunological Institute, BIBCOL, Hopkins Institutes. So these are the organizations which are being funded liberally, that they will get the technology from Bharat Biotech and later from Covishield and increase the production at their site. So the technology transfer making these sites, and this will boost at least 4, 5, 6 times the production of the vaccine, which is now even up to 10 times. We hope that in next 8 months, these all units will be working.
Okay, that's quite important and a wonderful news out there. Multi-pronged strategy, which you described, Professor Gupta. Dr. Gangakhedkar, would it be right to say that once we have these additional vaccines as well, it'll become easier to go ahead and meet that target which we're talking about, which you're earlier referring to, having everybody, almost all those who are above the age of 18 getting vaccinated. Obviously, it would have been difficult with just 2 vaccines, but with Sputnik also coming into fray and, the other international vaccines and the domestically produced or being vaccine candidates being worked upon, that would make the job a bit more easier.
Absolutely. More than the number of vaccine that would be perhaps available. Perhaps one thing which will drive the rapid rollout is to import vaccines if they can access them. Though we also know at present, majority of those players may not be willing to supply dosages as much as we would like to have. But that will perhaps open up a larger market, because they themselves will ensure that in order to make profits, they would perhaps like to see that more and more people, go into taking these vaccines. And that's an issue which becomes important, because we must acknowledge the fact that people tend to go for care in private sector more compared to the public sector. And that will make a difference. They might keep it open for 24/7 if it is required, as they have been given a permission to do whatever they can. I think in all, if I was to say, this is a very welcome step. Perhaps it is going to reduce the time to vaccinate everybody in the population. And it's only a question that all of us who tend to hear this news react and go to those centers to take the vaccine.
Indeed, that is the most logical and important step which all of us needs to take. Thank you so much, Professor Y.K. Gupta and Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar as well for your views and inputs here. So as our experts were pointing out, vaccination is a very, very important tool in this battle against COVID-19 pandemic. We should do away with the vaccine hesitancy and go and get ourselves vaccinated, all those who are eligible today, and all above the age of 18 who will become eligible from 1st of May onwards. But as our panelists once again pointed out, let us also remind you, just getting vaccinated is not enough. You will have to adhere to the COVID-19 appropriate behavior. That is the key to success in this battle against COVID-19 pandemic. And it's just a simple 3-step process. Wear your mask at all times when you're in public places. Also ensure that you strictly follow hand hygiene, wash your hands regularly, and maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet from others when you're out there. These 3 simple steps will go a long way in ensuring the safety and security of your near and dear ones, yourself, and everybody else in the society and country. Thank you so much.